I need you to hate so I can use you for your energy.
This is real sales talk. Real sales advice from real sales practitioners. Giving you tips on how to dominate your sales quota are your co-hosts, Sean Mitchell and Phil Keene. What's going on, everyone? It's Real Sales Talk. It's your host, Sean Mitchell. Actually going solo today. Phil had a prior commitment, and this is season 6, episode 9. I can get that out. So we've got a special guest today. It's the VP of Sales at Drift, Armen Zildjian. Armen, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. How's it going?
Doing amazing. Doing great. Lots of great stuff happening. Excited to dive in today. And some of the things that we're going to talk about are going to be really insightful for those listening to this podcast that are in a leadership position, are considering getting into leadership. We're going to dive into the mind of a VP of sales as well. You're relatively new at Drift, so I really want to dive into the mind of someone who is at a new company, creating new processes, trying to identify what the strategy is. So let's go ahead. Let me just give you a chance to kind of give our listeners an insight into how you got to Drift. So take maybe 2 or 3 minutes and talk about the story of how you found Drift and what you've been doing here over the last several months that you've come into the role.
Sure. Oh, thanks for that. So how I found out about Drift was actually one of the investors from one of my prior companies introduced myself and the CEO back probably in the middle of last summer. And I was just probably 6-8 months into a new gig and wasn't really interested, but I knew of David Cancel, the CEO, who was a former chief product officer at HubSpot. And he and I had actually served on an advisory board together at another company, but actually never met each other because we weren't ever at the same meeting. And so I took the opportunity to at least meet him. And as we talked about his vision for the company and for what he was after, I got pretty passionate about it. And so we started talking, and the company that I was with got bought, which was awesome, and freed me up to come over to Drift. So it all worked out in the end in terms of timing. So
totally. That's awesome. Yeah. And for those that haven't listened to the interview with David Gerhard, give me the 30 to 60 second elevator pitch on why Drift is relevant to our listeners, salespeople, sales leaders.
Sure. So there's an opportunity to really leverage messaging in a different way. Like when people want to communicate with each other, phone and email are only 2 ways to be able to communicate. Messaging is a third. But from a sales and marketing and in the B2B world, that's not really been leveraged. And so what Drift is doing is, listen, chat has been tried by various sales and marketing organizations throughout the years and failed. And the reason is you really can't cut through the noise. And so what Drift is doing is actually leveraging AI to be able to cut through the noise and capture and qualify people visiting the site and then connecting them with sales reps when it's relevant. So now sales reps can use chat and messaging but not have to filter through all that noise. They just get the best leads that are actually visiting the site right then and there. So it's super exciting for all sales teams that have leads coming from their website.
I think this is a no-brainer in 2017. This is something that each sales leader should be considering implementing into the company's website and implementing into the sales process. I'm a big fan of Drift, and I think I may be here becoming a super fan because I love what you guys are doing, and I think it provides massive value to the organization on the marketing and sales side. So let's talk a little bit about you're a new sales, you're a new VP in a new company, not a new VP, but you're a VP in a new company. And you look at everything that's going on in the sales process, the salespeople. Give us some insight into a fly on the wall into where does a sales leader in a new organization start? What are some of the things that you begin to assess the moment that you get into that new role?
Yeah, well, what I try to do even before that is, as I come into a new role, I like to talk to customers. I like to talk to the sales reps. I like to interview marketing and product folks and just get a good sense for sort of all those parameters and understand where the weaknesses are, where there's opportunity, that sort of stuff. And what I've found works best is really getting in the trenches. You know, as you start at a new organization, you've got all this feedback coming at you from marketing people saying, oh yeah, we just need the salespeople to sell more or take more calls. And the CEO is saying, we've got tons of leads and we just need to convert more. And what you really need to, and then the salespeople are saying the leads suck and we don't have time to follow up with this stuff because they're the bad leads. You know, I don't care if Marketo said it was 70 or higher because that guy was never going to buy anyway, that sort of stuff, right? So I'm a big believer. One of the books you know, and it's probably a controversial guy now because he turned out to be a little bit wacko, was Rudy Giuliani. He's got a book. And his tenet really that I took away from the book is getting down to see things for yourself at the ground level. And so being able to jump into the sales process with the sales folks clears away all the noise from potentially inexperienced salespeople only feeding you certain bits of information, marketing folks that don't talk to customers as much as salespeople do, having a lot of assumptions around their lead score and buying criteria and whether the behavior is indicative of somebody being in a buy cycle or not. And so you really got to kind of see for yourself what's really going on. I interview paying customers as well to understand what are the sort of critical value drivers for the product and who the audience is that we're selling to. They may be pointed at the wrong audience, for example. And so getting started there and then really starting to sort of define what are the critical points. We have a 5-step sales process that I just developed actually 2 weeks ago. It took me about probably 2.5 months to really get my hands around what was happening, what I wanted to happen, and then sort of saying, okay, here are the milestones in a sales process I want to create that says this is from one step to another. And I think the other important point that's critical is understanding what are the criteria by which someone creates an opportunity? Because if you have just each rep sort of thinking, oh, this is an opportunity, but not standardizing their criteria, you've got a bunch of these starting points that don't match up. And so you can never measure what's the real sort of efficacy of a sales process and what's your real close rate. And so you've got to kind of see for yourself and then get into starting to map out your milestones and then build that process and start to measure everything you can, and then whittle it down to what the key metrics are. So
for you, how would you define an opportunity to your team? What meets that criteria that you were talking about?
Yeah, I think, you know, the traditional, I'm a school of the MEDIC opportunity qualification process. So metrics, economic buyer, decision process, decision maker, identify pain, the competitor and the champion or the coach. And so what I try, when you create an opportunity, you gotta understand what pain or what opportunity they see. Who are they talking to? Is it the decision maker? Is it an influencer? Is it a champion or a coach? And do they have some idea of what metric they're going to measure both the pain and potentially the outcome and the solution and how we solve that pain? So if they don't really have a sense for that, it's probably not an opportunity yet, right? At the end of the day, there's not much meat on that bone to work on. And I think that's been the challenge, the age-old challenge between sales and marketing is, oh, well, I found somebody that's demographically fitting our profile. You should sell to them. Well, great. Okay. Do they have any problems we can solve? Do they perceive any problems? Do we need to educate them over a long period of time to get them from a problem exists all the way to I need to solve this now?
You talked about those 5 steps. I want to go back to that. And can you shed any light on what those 5 steps are or maybe how you develop those?
Yeah, I actually have them right here. I'm just going to click over
awesome.
to it. So it's a typical discovery phase, and the whole point of the document in helping these people, helping the reps is, we all need to be singing off the same song sheet on where we are, both from a forecasting perspective, and I think the more important thing is knowing what the next thing you need to do with that opportunity, whether it's to get in touch with the economic buyer and validate that they agree that there's pain that needs to be solved and the company needs to invest in. So it's really dialing in, where are you and what's the next step, no matter what the next touch point is or the communication channel. So we have a discovery phase just like everybody else. And I've got what are the gates to get from that stage to the next stage, and what are the critical questions you have to have answers to from getting from that stage to another. So I'll give you a flavor for it, right? So the gate is understand the process, and for Drift, what is their current lead funnel process? Identify the top pain or opportunity, identify the champion, and the champion agrees that Drift will have an impact on those metrics. And at the end, to move to the next, you've got to be able to say that champion will introduce us to the decision maker, and they'll let us demo to that person. And you don't move to the next stage until you can do that. And then it goes so on and sort of a qualified stage. That's where the decision maker agrees that they're, with the champion, that there's something there that they can solve. Then the demo is complete, and we're presenting the solution with a business value assessment to the economic buyer. We send a proposal, we negotiate, close, and ask for referrals.
Awesome. That's really cool. And so how are you keeping sales reps accountable to this process? Do you include this in your one-on-ones? At what point do you have these sort of conversations to ensure that they're following this outlined process?
Right. It's all about questions. So each one of those questions, they know I'm going to ask the question. They say they're at stage 3. They know I'm going to ask the questions. Okay, what did this person say when you asked them this question? And if they go, I don't even have to hear anymore, you didn't ask the question. Ask the question. Or if you think you don't need that, you got to tell me why. What's the circumstance? Maybe the CEO is friends with my CEO, and we can jump a step. So I'm not unreasonable to the point where we can't skip steps. But invariably, no matter, I've been doing this a long time, and if you skip steps, your people go silent or the deal goes south, and you don't know why. And it's normally because you've missed a step in the process.
Totally. I love it. What tools or products are you using to, one, either manage your these 5 steps, or maybe I'm curious to know, like, this is something that I've always been amazed by with managers, whether they're good at it or not, is how do they track and recall those conversations from with sales reps from previous one-on-ones? Do you have some sort of outline where you're identifying what their intrinsic motivator is, what they're trying to get at? Is it, motivated by money? Is it motivated to put their kids through college? Are you using any tools to ensure that you're maximizing your ability to pull the best out of sales reps?
Not tools necessarily, or at least not yet. The gamification of sales team is a pretty fine art. I do, there's a lot of reps and most of them are competitive. So I really use a lot of that in terms of my incentives, both monthly and quarterly, along with just the typical quota accelerators and all that sort of stuff. But really gamifying, you ring the bell, you get to go have dinner with the CEO, all that kind of stuff that, each rep is different in the sense that some of them want praise and they want to be seen as the best. Some of them just want money and don't want to talk to anybody else and just want to make a lot of money. Some of them want to be managers someday and want to show that they can do things beyond just close deals. So you've really got to get to, again, it's back to my point about, getting down to the ground level. It's not only to understand the market and the customers and the value, it's also to understand your reps and what motivates them, because each one is motivated slightly differently. And if you treat them all the same, you're going to lose people, and you're going to probably lose good people. So from a tool set, I don't have one yet. There's a bunch of tools coming out or that are out that can gamify this. So as you know, there's a guy called Steve Richard. Hey, Steve, shout out to Steve, who's got Exec Vision that helps reps ask for coaching and get coaching. And it sort of does text to or voice to text reconciliation. There's another product out there called Jiminy by Tom Lavery. Hey, Dom, that he does that, as well as uses the social aspect of the sales team to coach each other. So each rep gets to see the other rep's conversations and like give praise and high fives, but also give critical coaching so that the team becomes this organism that sort of starts to self-police and self-motivate.
Cool. That's super helpful. One more point, and then we can kind of move on to another topic here. So when are you storing all of those conversations with your sales reps in your head, or do you have like a Google spreadsheet or something where you're taking notes and saying, okay, remember when we spoke 3 weeks ago about X? How is that coming along? Or, you know, what about why?
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough to have a pretty good memory, which
Cool.
much to the dismay of my sales team when I asked them, hey, how did it go with Kurt the other day? I'm like, how did you remember that his name was Kurt and we were doing this next step? But, you know, invariably as the team grows, you can't do that, right? So we record that stuff. When I do my one-on-ones, we have that set up in our database. And so I know what the next step is, and I can keep notes to myself on here's where we were the last time and here's what you said. And I usually do that with any deals that are north of 50%.
Okay. What database are you using? What's that?
Salesforce. We use Salesforce.
Okay.
CRM. We use HubSpot for our marketing automation tools. And then obviously Drift as one of our source of communication and leads.
Cool. All right. That's a good segue. So when we were talking earlier, you talked about this scenario where you host a webinar and the sales reps are actually utilizing Drift as these people on the webinar are taking a look at the website. So talk about the execution of that. What does that look like and how does that work?
Yeah. So, you know, Drift is, you know, the way I look at Drift and the challenging thing, as I mentioned when we first spoke, was, you know, I'm trying to, you know, through using Drift, using a different kind of sales process, and there's different modes of engaging with folks now that might change the way and manner in which sales reps are scored on how they're progressing through the sales process. And at this particular case is really about capture, right? So you have right now, if you asked any sales group, what does your sales team or BDRs spend most of their time on? And it's chasing people that used to be on your site and chasing people that may have looked at a piece of your content at some point in the past. And meanwhile, during the time that those salespeople are doing that, there's people on your site right now that actually want some information and some help. And so what we're trying to do is flip the script a little bit and say, listen, what's possible in actually having your sales team spend more of their time with people that are there right now, and then spend the rest of their time chasing like a traditional sales team would, but first first priority, challenge them to think about actively engaging people that are on your site. And so the most obvious use case is webinars. So most companies have webinars, and when they do, at the end, marketing gets the list. They upload the list to Salesforce. They say the hot ones are the ones that ask questions and we're engaged, and then the chase is on. And so what we do is we actually we call it shooting and fish in a barrel hour. And during that time, when we're delivering the webinar, invariably people go to your website and figure out whether or not what they're hearing is useful and maybe do a little bit of light research. Well, what we do is the sales reps are right there, initiate a chat with somebody. Thanks for coming by. Oh, it looks like you were on the webinar. That's great. Want to book a time and we can spend some time whether or not it's a fit for you. And we're getting a capture rate of 20 to 30% for that hour. So 90 people come to the webinar and we're picking up 30 meetings right in that hour, rather than, you know, 2 weeks down the road, maybe getting 10 out of the list that was produced from marketing. And you can use this in a bunch of different ways. Like, think about all the times that you generate a high volume of traffic to your site. You do a product launch, you do a webinar, you might be at a trade show, and then maybe people go back to their hotel room and check out your stuff, right? Or you're at a conference or something else. Those surges are great opportunities to capture people while your products or services are on top of mind and they're coming to your site to learn. You got to capture those people because they may not get to the point of your site where it's relevant to them, and they go away saying, you know what, it's not a fit. And you're chasing them 3 weeks or a month later, and they never call you back because in their mind, they already convinced themselves that it wasn't a good fit.
Totally. And I think the key there for our listeners is top of mind. These people are on your website. Why not capture that opportunity while they're in that frame of mind, while they're in that thinking about your product or service? Why not have something that you can leverage to reach out to them when they're thinking about nothing else besides your product? How cool is that? So tell me a little bit about the details of that. So you mentioned that while they're on the website, during the webinar or whatever, during a conference or convention, you have sales reps that proactively reach out. So tell me a little bit about that in the case that people listening aren't as familiar with chat. So can the reps actually see the person or IP address and location inside of your platform? How do they know to proactively reach out, or how does that work?
Yeah. So rather than traditional capture points of, hey, fill out this form, fill out this form, or trial demo or whatever else button you have on your site, and then you can get the content. We actually just have everything sort of ungated on our site. And the site visitors that come, we either have bots using the AI to ask people, hey, what did you come to Drift for, and what were you hoping to find? They answer a question, and then we say, great, just in case we lose touch, can you give us your email? And then we identify them. That's one way. And then the other way, we have an integration with a database provider that does company to IP lookup. And so even if they're an anonymous site visitor, we can see what company they're coming from. And the cool thing there is, like, someone's coming from IBM. Hey, IBM, glad to see that you came by, hoping that we could chat. What were you hoping to see? And the person goes, how do you know I'm from IBM, right? So I think it's really cool to be, everybody knows that they're tracked on sites these days anyway, so it's not necessarily a big surprise, but it's a way to engage them and kind of shake them out of their sort of normal way of, I'm just going to peruse the site, and actually engage them and say, hey, what were you looking to do? What were you hoping to see? Hey, I saw that you were, because you can see the list of people on the webinar, registered for the webinar, you recognize that company name. Hey, I saw you probably watching the webinar right now. Well, and then imagine that, like, you're on a webinar, you're on the site, someone says, oh, I see you watching the webinar. How relevant is that? Like, you're talking to that person about what they're thinking about right at that moment. It's really, like, I think about it as a sort of concierge service.
Yeah, totally. And this, I'm glad you mentioned the AI piece, because this, I think, is pretty forward-thinking and groundbreaking. I talked to one of the first episodes that we did at the beginning of 2017, Phil and I, we talked about upcoming trends, and one of my hot buttons or topics was AI. So talk a little bit about how that's integrated. How does that work, and how can that help an organization fit into that sales process?
Right, yeah. So we have two concepts that really help. So again, traditional chat, if you just sort of put that in and turn it on your website, you'd have to, the first worry point is, well, it's going to take up all my reps' day of following up with people that want to talk to support or whatever else, right? And so how does it impact my process? How does it impact my workflow? How do I make sure that it doesn't distract my salespeople, right? That's the first concern anybody has. And so the way we handle that is through the concept of campaigns and the concept of bots. And if you think about it, there are two levels of filtering so that the best stuff gets in front of your sales reps and the rest of the noise is moved off to the side. So campaigns are a robust set of criteria that are really display when criteria. So is the company over a certain size? Is it in a certain industry? Have they raised a certain amount of money? Have they, do they have this level of revenue? Do they have this number of employees? If not, don't display it. Or display when conditions around, is this their first visit to the site, or is it their third visit to the site? Have they viewed 3 pages? Are they on the pricing page? So there's a series, again, of display when ads. So chat doesn't show up for anybody that is fitting into your sort of demographic, firmographic, or behavioral criteria. That's filter number one. Filter number two is the bots, right? Which asks, what do you, to try to get to more about intent. What are you hoping to accomplish here? And when they say human, we get an alert that says, oh, someone wants to talk to a human, let me jump in. Or someone mentioned something in particular, like maybe our competition, our sales reps jump in. So if you think about that level of sophistication and filtering, you can imagine that sales reps actually get the best people that are coming to your site right at that moment with sort of top of mind of your products. Imagine that, so that now the best leads that are on your site right now, you're actually able to engage with live. That's how we think about it.
It's killer. I mean, for the sales rep who's listening to this, imagine if you could have a personal assistant pre-qualifying the person who's on the website. I mean, that really sounds like what the bot is doing.
And the connect rate is 100%, right? What's the connect rate of email, or what's the connect rate of phone or open rate, right? This is 100% open and connect rate.
That's cool. You had mentioned some other ways, and maybe we already talked about this, but I want to make sure that you've got a chance to address it directly. What are some creative ways that sales teams can use chat to generate activities outside of the webinar idea?
Sure. So we have people that come to our site. So when you come to our site, everybody gets cookied as usual, like any other site. But if you go to a particular product page and you visited that a couple of times, those are hot leads for us as well, because especially we have two modes, in-app or not in-app. So if someone's an existing customer, for example, and isn't on our sort of more senior plans, and they're visiting a product page that's part of that component, we know this customer's probably looking to upgrade, right? And you're jumping on that right away. And the same thing with new visitors. Oh, this person's visited the site 3 times. So we're really sort of dialing in that intent criteria, and that's the creative way. We also do the same thing with our follow-up of our emails, right? So then they're not on the site anymore, great. Our email strategy is now informed by the site visits, the pages that they clicked on, and all the other interaction through the chat widget that potentially gives you, again, the sense of where the value is for that customer. And now you're speaking less broadly about your products and services, but more probably narrowed down to what the use case is for that person that's visiting.
This was an idea that came up when I was speaking with David, but and you've kind of lightly touched on this, but talk about the relevancy of chat in connection with landing pages. You're running ads on Facebook, for example. They click on the ad, it takes them to a landing page. How can chat be used to help support that person looking at that landing page?
Right. So the bots can really be programmed to act and behave and ask questions differently based on the URL of the visitor. So whatever page they're on your site, so you can have a support bot that's very support-ish in the way it talks and communicates with someone who's on a support page, or you might not want to do support at all. Maybe it's a specific type of product that's aimed at a particular industry or use case, and you talk about that in a very familiar way to those visitors. For a landing page, someone is clicking on a very potentially high-value target, right? So they're at a very precise moment in time, and the bot, what's nice about it is we know that if you've clicked on a call to action, specifically an email that we sent out, we know the messaging that you were reacting to when you clicked on that. So you actually continue that conversation in that person's mind as they click on the landing page. Oh, you must have read the email that said this. Here's the landing page, and here's the things that we want you to look at, right? So you're actually continuing that conversation from the moment in time when they reacted to from the email and clicked and took the call to action. Now you're talking to them, very relevant and very timely, right at that moment in time, carrying through that conversation without having a salesperson do it, and then you're qualifying.
I think it's amazing, and I think you're really onto something. So let's move into a topic that I'm very, very curious about, and this is SDR BDRs. Right. We on this podcast have probably talked about SDRs ad nauseum. Tell me a little bit about the thought process around not having an SDR BDR.
Right. Yeah. So far at Drift, we don't have BDRs and SDRs. I don't know if we will or we won't. And I think it's a little bit of a provocative topic, and my point of view is probably a little bit provocative. And
I think so too.
I'm trying to, sorry to some people out there that like this stuff. So, I think that, the whole idea of BDR, so they were telemarketers, right? When I started in sales in 1995, I started as a telemarketer. I was given, sadly enough, a phone book and a telephone and made cold calls. So, the concept has been around for ages, but I think it's different now, and the reason is different. There's been different offshoots of it. So you have SDRs, BDRs, LDRs, whatever other DRs you want to think about. And I think traditional outbound BDRs, great. You may or may not want to do that, and I can give you the criteria by which I measure whether or not I do that. But the one that I really am it keeps me up at night why people do it is the LDR, the lead development rep that's actually following up with leads in the funnel. And it came out of the inbound marketing funnel problem, which is you're getting a 1 to 2% conversion rate at the bottom. Marketo is saying call the score 71s. Your sales team's called the score 71s and they stink. Marketing saying we need everybody to call every lead we produce, And now we've got this team that's designed to call leads generated by marketing. And then the first reaction to most companies is, let's put our least qualified rep on that, the brand new ones. SDRs are the senior people. They're doing the outbound calling. So wait a minute. So you're taking the least qualified rep, putting them in front of the targets that you've paid money to capture, and now you're putting that in the hands of those folks to convert. Just doesn't make any sense to me. So it's something that I think, better yet, let's figure out who the quality targets are and talk to them with salespeople. And then if you need to supplement outbound calling with BDRs, then you should do that. I think the assessment that I look at is, first and foremost, sort of holistically, what does the market say? Like, how many people in the market are out shopping for your products and services, right? Like, if there's not a lot of them, you probably need to do outbound calling. And then you may need to supplement that with BDRs because you want your salespeople selling. I got it. But if there's not a lot of people out shopping, you got to go create demand, right? And so you got to do that through marketing, but also potentially outbound calling. I think the other thing you look at is holistically your lead funnel and the activity against it. And just as I mentioned, like, who do you want your leads? Who follows up with your leads? Are those enough leads? Are they the right quality leads? And then figure out if you need to supplement with outbound calling. And then third is, what's the conversion rate and ACV rate, right? Like, at the end of the day, if the ACV is high enough, you might want to spend time, money, and effort to have a BDR team. But I think those are the data points that by which I use the calculus to say whether or not, like, does this make sense? I think oftentimes people blindly go into, I need BDRs, right? And I think there needs to be an assessment of the maturity of the market, the number of shoppers in the market, what your lead funnel looks like now, and kind of what those conversion rates and ACV are before you just dive into the deep end of the pool.
I know this varies from company to company, but I mean, for Drift, what is that threshold for ACV where you would want to put BDRs in place?
Yeah, I probably haven't gotten to the point where I've figured that out yet. And I'll be truthfully honest, I've been here 4.5 months or whatever it is. And so right now what I'm optimizing for is, what's the number of shoppers? What's the quality and volume of leads? And what are the edges of that before I start, like, picking my head up and going, okay, what else do I need to be doing differently? My gut probably tells me that, these are deals that are certainly in our enterprise plan. But then again, how many, at what ACV, what sales cycle, and what expense do I need to be able to do that? And do I need those deals this year to hit my target or not? And if I don't, it's probably more of a distraction than helping.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. I want to give you an opportunity to let our listeners know where they can learn more about Drift, as well as if they want to connect with you online and follow your journey.
Yeah. So come to drift.com, sign up. We have a free piece of the product, which is called Profiles, which allows you as a salesperson to create a V card that gives you free chat. So you can actually send those links out to your customers or your prospects, and they can chat with you free of charge. And you can put your Facebook and your LinkedIn and whatever else you want up there. And they can also, which is also free, schedule a meeting with you. So it actually links up with your Google Calendar and allows you. So as a salesperson, free tool allows you to both chat with your customers or prospects and be able to schedule meetings with them, and puts the power in the hands of the prospect. We've seen a higher rate of people booking meetings just by virtue of doing that. And if you want to connect with me, mine is team.drift.com/Armen. ARMEN, and it has a little bio about me, and we can chat, or you can schedule a meeting. We can meet at that time.
Amazing. That's awesome. Well, appreciate you being on the show. We're going to transition into the unique YouTube sales content rapid fire questions. So this segment is all designed to give our listeners an insight into the mind of sales professionals, sales leaders, and sales rock stars. So the first question I've got for you, Armen, is, who would you say has had an influence on your sales career? Who's that first person that you think of that has significantly impacted the trajectory of your sales career?
It's just interesting. There's a lot of inflection points, right? It's when you're a sales rep and you're hammering the phones. What was the manager that beat the crap out of you and got the most out of you? And then your first leadership role and who believed in you the most. And then the person that gave you that sort of senior leadership role that really sort of sets you apart. There's three. There's Gary Wheaton, who beat the crap out of me and as a salesperson got the most out of me, and then promoted me to my first director role, and then going to log me in. Both Alan DePietro and Kevin Harrison, who were my sales leaders at the time, and then Mike Simon, who was the CEO and is now the chairman of Log Me In, a mentor of mine that I continue to sort of follow and emulate as best I can.
What do you, can you identify a certain point in your life where you really understood that sales was going to be a profession for you? Was there a specific moment that you thought, I absolutely love this. I'm addicted to, you know, the sales process, the chase, the close of the deal. At what point did you realize that this is going to be a long-term career for you? Yeah,
it's hard. I think I was always a sort of extrovert anyway, and always in some sort of like being in front of people doing something. So that wasn't the aha moment for me. Sales just came naturally. I don't know that I ever really, while I was selling, felt like this would be my career for the rest of my life. What really was the aha moment for me was leading a team of people and seeing them achieve the things that they didn't think were possible for them, and then being in leadership. So I've had people that have reported to me that are now in VPs of sales role, directors of retention globally for different companies, and to see people achieve things that maybe they thought but weren't really sure they could achieve and get them to that level. That's the thing that just gets me out of bed every day.
Awesome. What routines do you have, if any, that you might be able to share with our audience and give them some insight into that? Do you have any routines either in the morning or in the evening time?
No, I don't. I think I'm a non-routine guy, actually. I'm getting pulled from soccer practice to baseball practice to nighttime calls to family time to meetings, and I don't really have a routine. I try to exercise as much as I can. I try to fit that into the routine. Is there anything? I think the routine on a daily basis is I try to be on at least 2 sales calls a day. Like I really do steal, and even I don't care how big my sales team gets. That's something that I always want to have. And I think in every moment in my career, looking back, I don't think I ever deviated a lot from that. Was being customer facing. I think you can, as a sales leader, never lose sight of what it sounds like when there's an objection being thrown at you, how the objection is handled, and that sort of stuff. Like you can never get far away from that.
I love it. It gives you a pulse on what is happening at the ground level, kind of as you talked about, getting on the ground floor, getting on the sales floor, and seeing and hearing and getting a feel for what's happening.
That's right.
Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you a ton, Armen. It's been great to get to know you. Great to get to understand why chat is an important part of a 2017 and beyond sales process. It makes sense to me, and I hope for our listeners it makes sense to them as well. And I hope you go check out Drift 2. This is not a paid advertisement, by the way. I just really like them a lot, and I think that it offers a lot of value to our listeners. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. And until then, we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks a lot. See ya.